Good evening, and welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Kyle Betts. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, a look back at stories from our weather team, from water challenges in valley cities to recycling solar panels. But first, as the war between Russia and Ukraine continues, there's one factor that both sides have to pay attention to: the weather. At Luke Air Force Base here in Arizona, a group of weather forecasters always have their eyes on the sky to ensure their missions and personnel are secure. Cronkite News reporter Evan Liss explains.
Luke Air Force Base in Glendale is home to the largest fighter wing in the U.S. Air Force and trains 3/4 of the world's F-35 pilots. The weather flight team has a big role in making sure operations can happen safely.
Our job here is twofold. It's asset protection for the base, and it's also we do the mission forecast for all 9 of the squadrons that we have here on station.
Fighter jet missions are constantly coming and going from the base.
We just do the weather for every mission they go on. If they're going somewhere else in the country, somewhere else in the world, we're doing the weather for them there, no matter what.
Most National Weather Service meteorologists have broad responsibilities to watch and warn their forecast area. But here at Luke Air Force Base, the weather flight team is more focused on how weather will affect base operations and missions.
So a National Weather Service meteorologist is really a general forecaster, because they've got, 6 people over there. They've got an entire third of Arizona that they need to cover. They're forecasting for, dozens of airfields, and we're just forecasting for one airfield.
One airfield and the airfield's mission operations areas. These are airspaces designated for activities such as air combat maneuvers, air intercepts, and low-altitude tactics. The weather flight forecasters track these spaces and can shut down training exercises if weather becomes a hazard.
We do a lot more mission-specific, this is for this jet taking off at this time, going to this place sort of thing. They're a generalized, this is what's going to happen over this entire area through this time sort of forecaster.
South Central Arizona's relatively calm weather makes for excellent training conditions. But monsoon season from July through early September can make it difficult to precisely forecast where and when strong thunderstorms will pop up. Any lightning detected will generally shut down that airspace for the fighter pilots. Even during this more active time of the year, forecaster Ian Whitney says he has a pretty fun job.
We get to travel with our jets, so if our jets go somewhere for training, we get to go with those jets for training. I've been to Oregon, I've been to Utah, I've been to Wisconsin. People go to Vegas all the time for training, go Hawaii for training, go to Alaska for training, so you can travel everywhere.
At Luke Air Force Base, Evan Liss, Cronkite News.
You actually do not need a degree in meteorology to be a part of Luke AFB's weather flight team. Several of the forecasters we spoke to did 9 months of meteorology training, followed by 6 months to a year of on-the-job training, and of course, boot camp.
One of the most iconic plants in Arizona, the saguaro cacti, is encountering some dangers in our Sonoran desert. Luke Vickery tells us about one specific threat.
Buffle grass, an invasive plant, is overtaking the habitat of our beloved saguaro cacti. While there are efforts to get rid of it, it may be impossible to eradicate. The saguaro cactus is a symbol for Arizona, but invasive plant species are getting in the way of a plant that usually thrives in the Arizona desert. Saguaro National Park's restoration ecologist Perry Grissom says the biggest threat comes from one plant, buffle grass.
It's out there, it's just taking the water away from the saguaros, so they're not going to survive long term.
Buffle grass was brought to arid portions of the U.S. beginning in the 1930s for cattle forage and erosion control. The plant thrives because of its drought tolerance and high seed production. Little thought was put into how it would affect Arizona's native plants.
Kind of colonize these areas between trees and shrubs and cacti in the desert, where those areas are typically barren. Now they're being, colonized by bunch grasses, and so it's filling in the space between our saguaros and trees and shrubs.
The record-setting monsoon rainfall last year and predictions of another wet monsoon season means things could get worse for our saguaros.
Last year we had a really tremendous monsoon. We got a lot of rain, like double. And the natives did really well, but buffalo grass did much, much better than they did. It's just like a really strong competitor.
Once we exit monsoon season, the saguaro will struggle to compete with the new, stronger, and more stable buffalo grass. But there is another aspect of buffalo grass that challenges the saguaro. Here in Saguaro National Park, buffle grass not only competes for the same resources as saguaro cacti, but it can also start wildfires, which can be detrimental to a saguaro cactus.
You know, it might take 200 years for saguaros to blink out on some hillside, but with a fire, they could be gone, you know, overnight, basically.
The national park has plans in place to help mitigate the growth of buffle grass, but the timing of the treatment is tricky.
You know, post-summer and early fall, where some treatments have been conducted because there was an opportunity to treat the buffalo grass because it had greened up and was actively growing. And so when you apply herbicide, when it's green and actively growing, that's when the herbicide is most effective.
8% of Arizona's energy comes from solar. But what happens when your solar panels reach their end of life? Cronkite News reporter Peyton Major found researchers and a business that are giving old panels a new purpose.
Solar panels are expected to contribute 8 million tons of waste by 2030, according to the International Renewable Energy Agency. So it's now more important than ever to recycle panels sustainably, and Arizona is one of the states leading this effort. So what happens when a solar panel reaches the end of its 20 to 30-year lifespan? Well, the last place it should end up is in a landfill. That's why an Arizona State University professor and his team are working on a technology to salvage the panel's precious metals, such as silicon, silver, and even lead.
I am working on increasing the recovery rates of the lead. We don't want this ending up in our environment, in our groundwater, things like that.
And with a $485,000 grant from the Department of Energy, Meng Tao is hoping to revolutionize the solar panel recycling industry using chemicals to break down high-value metals.
We want to recover all the materials contained in solar panels, and then we can reuse these materials in making new solar panels.
A We Recycle solar facility in Yuma salvages these high-value materials without chemicals. Normally, they process up to 2,500 panels a day, removing the aluminum frame and glass exteriors. However, issues related to the pandemic have workers recycling by hand.
Supply chain issues have been very painful for us. We're on a 24-week delay that we just got informed about this morning for one of our main pieces of power equipment.
Until their power equipment arrives, the team won't have fully automatic operations. The equipment is useful for breaking down materials to be used in solar panels.
But we make it our goal to avoid landfill for at least 95% of what comes in the door here.
While their plant in Yuma continues to recycle hands-on, Arizona State University will work microscopically to ensure solar energy remains sustainable.
A new survey of bipartisan voters from 8 western states show that voters are increasingly worried about the environment. Luke Vickery breaks down how Arizonans specifically answered the survey.
In the 2022 Conservation in the West poll out of Colorado College, voters responded to questionings concerning conservation, energy, water, wildlife, and other pressing challenges. They polled more than 3,400 people in western states to get an idea of what our communities think of our environment. Here's what Arizonans think. Experts say protecting an interconnected network of lands and waters will give us the best chance at curbing the worst effects of climate change. It seems most Arizonans agree, with almost 80% of them supporting a national goal of protecting 30% of America's water and land by 2030. Speaking of land, Arizona is mostly public land, and that may be one reason why 64% of Arizonans say they have visited public lands at least twice in the past year. Fire and drought is also a concern. According to the survey, 81% of Arizonans are concerned about more frequent and severe wildfires. That fits with what we have seen out here in terms of wildfires. The acreage burn in the U.S. has nearly doubled in the last 3 decades. Another big concern for Arizonans, water. According to the survey, 83% are concerned about drought and reduced snowpack. Another environmental issue is our energy consumption. Recently, renewable energy sources accounted for about 13% of total energy consumption. Yet 69% of Arizonans support slowly transitioning to only clean renewable energy over the next decade. The poll broke down results by ethnic backgrounds, and it showed voters of all ethnicities were almost equally concerned about the state of our environment. At the Google touchscreen, Luke Vickery, Cronkite News.
The city of Scottsdale is making water cuts in an effort to reduce consumption from the Colorado River. Cronkite News reporter Luke Vickery tells us where the cuts are coming from and who is being most affected.
Scottsdale receives about 70% of its water supply from the Colorado River. And while most residents will not feel the impact of these latest cuts at their faucets, the city is asking residents to conserve, especially when it comes from outdoor usage. Arizona's brown landscape is due in part to 15 years of drought. Scottsdale is one of the first cities to decide it's time to make water cuts.
Let our residents know that it's a serious situation. We have enough water for our residents, but we really wanted them to understand the serious nature of the Colorado River cutbacks.
The seriousness of the drought does not just extend to people living in Scottsdale. Residents living outside the city can also be affected, depending on what kind of water systems are used on their property.
Couldn't imagine not having water to our home.
For the past decade, DeAngelis serviced her home with hauled water from Scottsdale.
So you can see behind me, so I have hauled water out here. So a truck comes, delivers our water, currently getting it from City of Scottsdale, and then they fill our water tank.
But as part of the Tier 1 water shortage stage, the city recently decided they will no longer service water hauling in her area, leaving her in need of a quick solution.
This neighborhood is just a glimpse of what's to come for the rest of the state.
Also part of Tier 1, the city itself is keeping their promise to cut back on its own water usage.
Try to up our own game with a pledge of saving 5% at city facilities as well.
The city of Scottsdale is working to better manage their water through areas like public parks like these. But the city can't do it alone. They're also asking residents to do their part in better managing their personal water usage. One way people can do that is by changing the landscape to xeriscaping, which requires little to no irrigation, something DeAngelis is already doing.
Not watering big yards and grass and thinking what we're doing with golf courses and all of those things, we're going to have to get really creative to conserve water.
Scottsdale may be the first city in Maricopa County to implement a Tier 1 water management plan. But if the drought continues, more cities could face similar cuts. The city of Scottsdale has only implemented Tier 1 of their drought management plan. But if the Colorado River drops in the next year, like it is projected, the city and residents may have to do more to conserve water. In the studio, Luke Vickery, Cronkite News.
The National Weather Service is experiencing a helium shortage for a key instrument used in forecasting. Peyton Major looked into how the shortage is impacting Arizona and the upcoming monsoon season.
Weather balloons are launched twice a day at over 100 places around the nation. But due to the helium shortage, the National Weather Service is limiting their launches. These balloons include an instrument called a radiosonde, which collects temperature, humidity, and wind speeds as it floats into the air. But with a lack of helium, the weather balloons aren't collecting data as frequently. All year long, the National Weather Service offices in Tucson and Flagstaff launch balloons twice a day.
We're about to launch a weather balloon.
During the monsoon season, the Salt River Project partners with Phoenix National Weather Service office to launch twice daily weather balloons.
The reason why SRP is so interested in this beyond the larger scale benefit to the meteorological community worldwide is locally during the monsoon season, thunderstorms, and better idea of how to have more efficient power generation.
The helium shortage is due in part to the war in Ukraine. Russia is one of the main suppliers of this gas for the United States. With a lack of helium, the Phoenix National Weather Service will restrict weather balloon launches to only severe weather days. Arizona Air Boutique is one of the main helium suppliers for weather balloons. They've noticed a major spike in helium costs.
When I first took over the business, the retail price for a tank of helium was about $40 retail. It's now about $180.
Lapori's business is busy now during graduation season, but he's worried about the future if prices continue to rise.
How much are people willing to pay for a helium balloon? Because it's going to just continue to escalate in the price.
As for weather balloons, the National Weather Service released a statement saying forecast accuracy won't be affected by the helium shortage. In fact, they say most of the weather balloons in America are fueled with hydrogen instead of helium. Salt River Project still uses helium and is concerned about supplies for the monsoon season.
In stock at SRP, we have about 25% of the supply we would need this summer to get through a whole summer business as usual. Right now, we can't order more. This month, there's basically no more helium available to come right now.
Weather offices in Phoenix and Tucson continue to use helium, saying it's a safer option in urban areas. But they are looking for other methods to fuel their balloon launches. In the newsroom, Peyton Major, Cronkite News.
When you think of the Phoenix metro area, you probably think very dry and warm. However, Maricopa County has the largest flood control network not just in the country, but in the entire world. Evan Liss explores how it protects us when the rain comes to the desert.
Arizona and Maricopa County in particular are well known for their abundant year-round sunshine. However, when it does rain here, flooding can quickly occur.
It doesn't take all that much rain to start causing flooding problems. We have a lot of topography here. So we have steep slopes from mountains going down in the valley regions. We have several major waterways that all flow through the Phoenix area.
In times like these, county officials need to know how much rain is falling, where it's falling, and where runoff water is flowing to. This is where the Maricopa County Flood Control District's alert network comes in.
Basic premise behind it is we're pulling in data in real time. That data is being sent from the station back here to flood control, and then we're making that station available.
Available to both the public and government officials who can then make decisions on road closures and evacuations.
So one of the things we really pride ourselves in, though, is being able to take that data and convert it into a digestible and usable piece for folks that are making decisions. We want our response to be proactive, not reactive.
And while a flood control network covering roughly the size of New Jersey provides excellent coverage, maintaining the automatic system is no easy feat.
You're understanding how to get to places, learning trails, learning how to maneuver through mountainous terrains and the snow, and also climbing towers.
But even with all the maintenance challenges, the value of having the system far outweighs the potential for tragedy in its absence.
Main role is just to keep the interactive map going and showing the data. So when we do get 100-year events, 500-year events, you can always go on the internet and look at the map to see where all the rainfall is coming, especially if it's in your side of town. You can tell and get ready and prepare.
In Phoenix, Evan Liss, Cronkite News.
Next time it starts raining near you, you can go to the Maricopa County Flood Control District's website and check out their gauges filling up in real time.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us. Break It Down is next. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.